Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we're talking about a recent ruling from the Supreme Court of the United States of America. Early Monday morning, the court finally voted and handed out its decision in the controversial Colorado baker's case, which ended up stating that he could not be forced to make a cake for a same-sex wedding, something he refused to do for personal and religious reasons. And while I do disagree with his decision not to serve a gay couple, I also believe he has a right to do it. But as you can imagine, the left-wingers are none too happy about this. They have turned a personal right of refusal case into a much bigger and overarching gay rights issue. Basically, like always, the liberals are making it all about them. And they're also reporting this loss of theirs in a pretty misleading and biased way. Virtually every single article coming out about this court decision is titled saying it was a narrow ruling, a narrow decision. Supreme Court rules on narrow grounds. They really like using that word narrow, and while it is accurate legally, it's also undoubtedly being phrased this way everywhere in order to try and curb the severity of their loss here. It's a propaganda tactic. We're going to go over all this story today. The Supreme Court, the Colorado baker's case, and the left using it to virtue signal for their gay agenda, and the biased mainstream media news and their propaganda tactics used to report on this. We're going to go over all of it today and more in this brand spanking new video. But first, let's take a quick minute to talk about a company who, without them, this show wouldn't even happen. I'm of course talking about our loyal and trusted sponsor, Virtual Shield. Did you know your home, business, or commercial internet routers record and store all your browsing data? Even if you're using incognito mode, your web browsing history can still be recorded by your routers and whatever your devices are connected to. And as if that's not a big enough reason to sign up with Virtual Shield, there's also been a recent urgent request coming from the FBI regarding our routers and internet security. Last week, the FBI urged Americans to reset all their routers in order to stop possible Russian-linked malware that could be on there. The malware is capable of blocking web traffic, collecting information that passes through home and office routers, and disabling the devices entirely. The Bureau announced on Friday, May 25th. So it sounds like now, more than ever, having extra computer and internet security protection is a must. And that's why I choose and recommend the premium services offered by Virtual Shield. They're the best. And for those who don't know, VPNs are virtual private networks that basically funnel your internet signature through Virtual Shield's secure servers. That way companies and the government can't track you and your internet information. And Virtual Shield added a new safety feature, which gives users the ability to block access to their device's cameras and microphones. That means no more spying on you, no more government listening into your convos. Check out their links below for more information, and thanks for your time. Now, back to the show. Let's start with a story from NBC News called, "In Narrow Ruling, Supreme Court Gives Victory to Baker, Who Refused to Make a Cake for a Gay Wedding," with the subtitle saying, "The opinion did not address the larger question of whether businesses can refuse to serve gay and lesbian customers." And here's a good time to address the narrow wording situation. You see, technically NBC is right. The ruling was narrow in that it only narrowly affects this particular case, and it's not addressing the larger question of whether businesses can refuse to serve gays in general. That's why it's technically a narrow ruling, but I don't think that's why every article and every lefty on Twitter is wording it that way. I think a lot of the reason they're using this narrow phrasing is to make it seem like this was a close call, like they just barely lost the case, but that's not true at all. The vote was 7-2 in favor of the baker's right to refuse. That's not a narrow win as far as the votes are concerned, so I'd appreciate it if any article or fake reporter wants to word it this way. They should have to explain they're using the specific, technical, legalese version of the word narrow, because most of the posts I've seen using it don't specify this at all. They're assuming people know what they're talking about, but in actuality, they're avoiding the explanation in order to make the headline sound better in their favor. This is misleading and wrong, and it needs to stop. The article goes on. The U.S. Supreme Court gave boost to advocates of religious freedom on Monday, ruling that a Colorado baker cannot be forced to make a cake for a same-sex wedding in a case that involved marriage equality and protection from discrimination. Now, you see, that's just not how I see this case at all. A lot of big words and big themes here, but I'm just not buying it. This part about the ruling giving a boost to religious advocates, that just sounds way off too. Sure, there were people hyping up both sides of this case. First, the baker refused the gay customers, then the LGBTQRSTUV coalition jumped in to make this a gay rights thing. Next, the religious right came in to back up the baker, and now we're making this whole thing way bigger and more complex than it needs to be. In my opinion, this is just a company owner refusing to serve a potential customer, and the Supreme Court is deciding whether or not he has a right to do that, which I think he does. And this whole issue is really that simple. I don't care about what reason the owner has for his choice, and I don't care what religion or background he is, just like I don't care what the sexual orientation of the wannabe customer is. And I'm getting the feeling the Supreme Court sees it this way too. That's why they're not making a precedent or mandate that will apply to wider groups in the future. It's because this isn't about the religious affiliations or the sexual orientations of those involved. It's about the right to refuse service at your own store. It's the radicals who jumped on board and turned this into a media spectacle and a polarized event. The LGBT left-wingers are the ones who started started making this about gay rights and discrimination, ignoring the fact that the company owner has rights too. And why do you want to make some guy who hates your way of life, why would you want to force him to make your wedding cake anyway? Sounds a little over the top and a bit fashy to me. Like the SJWs are getting off on a power trip again. Except this time, they've clearly failed. And that's a win for us. The Supreme Court made the right decision here, and the SJWs are going to have to take an L. And funny enough, this loss is coming during the left's Pride Month too. Ouch. Bummer. It also sounds like the baker in this case isn't such a bad guy, just a more reserved religious type. The decision was a victory for Jack Phillips of Masterpiece Cake in Denver, who has said that his cakes are works of art and that requiring him to bake them for same-sex weddings would force him to express a view that violated his religious beliefs. He runs his business guided by religious principles, closing on Sunday and refusing to make cakes containing alcohol or celebrating Halloween. Well, I guess it wasn't just gay cakes that Jack Phillips was refusing to make, but it was refusing the gays that got him into big trouble here. Imagine that. It's almost as if there's some sort of bias. It's almost like there's an over-the-top support for LGBTQ people out there. Almost like there's a gay agenda going on, maybe? Think about it like this for a minute. Let's go ahead and flip the script. Hypothetically, do you think a gay-owned cake shop would get in trouble for refusing to serve a radical religious group? Like, say, the Westboro Baptist Church. They hate gay people. Do you really think a case like that would make it all the way to the Supreme Court? I don't even think people would take this question seriously, suggesting that a gay company has to make a cake for gay haters? That would never happen. This would never even go to court. No fucking way. And funny enough, the same liberals who are calling for the Colorado baker to be forced to make cakes for gays, those are the same people who unironically would cheer on a gay baker who refused to make cakes for the Westboro Baptist Church. Hypocrisy much? The baker's own lawyer even commented further on this, saying, "Government hostility toward people of faith has no place in our society." Yet the state of Colorado was openly antagonistic toward Jack's religious beliefs about marriage. The court was right to condemn that. I think they were right too. I'm not a very religious guy anymore, but I was raised Catholic, and I do sympathize with Christians. And I certainly believe in our right to religious freedom here in America. That's a right this country was founded on, and that's what makes this country America too, so I don't think the state or government should be infringing on that at all. It really looks like the left-wingers pushing their gay agenda here has gone a little too far. They pushed it too far, and thankfully, the Supreme Court stepped up and stopped this nonsense. Leftists really don't know when to quit, do they? The LGBT people already have all the rights and freedoms they could ever hope for in America, but no, that's never enough. Now they want to use the government to force some private baker in Colorado to make a wedding cake for them. Absolutely absurd and ridiculous. Frankly, I can't believe this case ever even went to court, let alone got pushed all the way up to the Supreme one. Next, before we go, let's finish up by looking at a video from NBC News about this story. This is them trying to spin things live on the air in their special report after the ruling was announced.
It has, but in the narrowest possible way. This is really a ticket good for one ride only. He wins, but the court doesn't answer the larger questions here, which is, what about some other baker or florist or person who prints wedding invitations or is a DJ at a wedding? Do they have a First Amendment right to refuse to serve same-sex couples because it would violate their religious principles?
Of course people have a right to refuse to serve people. I don't see why this is even a fucking question. The real question here should be, do gay people have a right to force others to serve them? That's the way I see this whole thing. Sure, NBC will try and say over and over that this was the narrowest, most narrow, super extra narrow victory for the baker, but that's still a loss for them, no matter how you slice it, no matter how many narrows you throw in there. The left and the mainstream media are trying to justify and weasel their way out of this, but I still say this is a big loss for them, and thus a huge win for us, the people, and a win for sanity and justice.
This was Jack Phillips, a baker in Denver, who refused to bake a cake for a same-sex couple's wedding celebration. He said that would violate his religious principles and would violate his right of free expression because the state would, in essence, under its human rights law, be forcing him to express a view he didn't agree with. He argued that his cake baking was a matter of free expression.
It is free expression, especially for what this guy's working on. He's making massive handmade wedding cakes, all with special designs and flavors and colors and everything. He spends hours and hours, days and weeks working on this stuff, so I could see why he would refuse a couple of customers he wasn't into. Bakeries like this have long wait lists. They have more potential customers than they can handle, so people get turned down all the time. Like we said before, he's turned turn down alcoholic cakes and Halloween ones. He might even choose to refuse to make a Star Trek cake because he's a big Star Wars fan. And that's his right. Whatever this baker wants to make, that's up to him. It's his prerogative. The real issue here is, why are gays and leftists so entitled? They're so entitled they think they could force people to make stuff for them, despite their wishes. That's the really fucked up thing going on here.
Back to you.
All right, Pete, sounds like the larger issue is saved for another day. For most of you, you'll return to Today. I'm Savannah Guthrie in New York. This has been an NBC News special report.
I guess the larger issue is, should gays be able to always have their way, every time, ever? And if anyone ever does anything a gay person doesn't like, they should get arrested and punished by the government. Is that the larger issue you're talking about? I know this sounds ridiculous, but it really sounds like the left and NBC would like this baker locked up or something, which is utter nonsense. In the end, it really seems like the left wants to have their cake and eat it too, and they want to force people to make cakes for them, which kind of sounds like modern slavery to me. I'm truly glad the Supreme Court saw through this hustle though, and made the right decision here. Today, justice, morality, and decency won out in court, and for all the times Democrats preach about tolerance and acceptance, they sure don't have any for us, or for religious people. There's no tolerance for conservatives, Christians, or Trump. Hell no. But I say, tolerance needs to go both ways. No more double standards, no more hypocrisy, no more none of it, not gonna take it, never again. So thank you to the Supreme Court for this just decision. I really hope it lasts and we see less bullshit like this that they have to deal with. What do you guys think? Should the Colorado baker have been forced to make this cake? Why was the gay couple so entitled in the first place? And does the media really think we're gonna be tricked by their overuse of the word narrow? Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. See y'all next time.